What's good, family? Kick back. Today we're going to explore a concept that's both challenging but also liberating. What we call life, in truth, is more accurately defined as death. Additionally, we will examine how the self that we think we are is far removed from the self that we operate as, and even further from the self that we were created to be. This communication between the two of us will deconstruct the illusion of life, the illusion of death, our illusional identity, and offer us a deeper clarity on the true metaphysical nature and purpose of self. Lock in. Let's rock. Our societal programming offers us definitions for us to learn and operate in accordance with. And these definitions oftentimes lack substance, lack truth. They lack factual basis, they lack scientific evidence, but they have been adopted by the masses as to be true. They have been acknowledged as the truth. They have been identified as beneficial and conducive for your successful presentation in the physical. You've partnered yourself with illusions. You've partnered yourself with lies. And you say that you have a desire for truth. You say that you have an appetite for reality. You say that you're real. What is life? Our society defines life as the physical experience between birth and death. The physical experience between birth and death. You are eternal. Before your birth, before your body, you existed. After your transition, after this time spent in your body, you will exist in whatever form there is to come. I'm not one to pretend to know, because I've never been. If I have, I don't recall. You and I have been taught that life is the physical experience between birth and death. Two illusions. Two things that seem to be true, though they counter the universal truth of your eternal existence. So which one will you partner with? Which one will you believe to be true? Will you believe it to be true? Will you know what is, which is you are eternal and you've always existed and you've always been, and the birth of your body was not the beginning of you at all? Will you partner with the truth of death? That death has no power. Death is not real. Death is but an illusion. Death is but something that we do not understand because we didn't understand the assignment of being temporarily placed inside of a physical container on the physical plane to make one kingdom a reflection of another. Understand, you haven't been able to make this kingdom reflect that kingdom because this kingdom has become the very thing that has trained you in how you operate, how you think on the day-to-day. We measure life. Let's back up. Our identities are shaped by external factors. Culture. What is culture besides what other people that look like you have been seen doing, have been documented as doing, have been promoted, stereotyped, and categorized as having liked, enjoyed, and likely to engage in on a later occasion? We're calling that our culture. We're calling that what we come from. We're calling that something that we allow to shape how we think about ourselves and how we present ourselves to others inside of the universal experience on the physical plane. External factors such as our upbringing. Now you have a subcategory of the category. You have the culture, and then inside of the culture there's the household and the upbringing and the culture of the household inside of the culture. So the culture has a culture, and then the culture's culture has a culture. You can't keep up with this, but yet this is what you have allowed to shape your identity, and not only dictate to you who you are, but who you've proclaimed yourself to be to others. The culture, your upbringing, your physical body, how you look. Remember that dictates for you what culture you're a part of and what group you're supposed to watch and imitate. Your experiences, your past mistakes, your fleeting moments, the ones that you weren't even present for inside of, the ones that you missed, the ones that you were inside of the past presentation or locked inside of your thoughts, trying to figure out what it was that you were supposed to do in this moment. That was another gift, another opportunity for you to declare the power and the authority and the dominion that is deposited freely inside of all of us. You've allowed for that, for those moments of ignorance, those moments of absence, to shape who you think you are and who you present yourself to be to others. We measure life through time, material success, and sensory interactions. Again, 3 more illusions. Time is but an illusion. Remember, you're eternal. How can someone eternal be confined inside of time? Remember, all that is true of your Creator is true of you. Your Creator was not confined to time. You have submitted yourself to time. You have forfeited your authority to time. You allow for the clock to tell you, out of your desperation and out of your ignorance of who you are, what you were given before your birth, out of a desperation to obtain the things that you think you need, you have allowed for the clock, time, to be your master. Material successes have defined whether you lived a good life or you lived a poor life. And sensory interactions, the things that you could touch, the things that you could see, the things that you could smell, the things that you could taste, the things that you could hear. If that's the case, then life is but an illusion. Metaphysically, what we refer to as life is simply the animation of matter, confined to time and space. I'm going to run that back. Metaphysically, what we refer to as life is simply the animation of matter, confined to time and space. This perception of life is bound by the body. But in reality, the physical body is more a vessel for death than life. The body is in constant decay from the moment of birth. The body that you obsess over, the body that you polish, the body that you love to present, the body that you love to be complimented, is in constant decay from the time of its birth. But yet, the body is what we partner with and what we define life by. We have grown to identify life as the collective group of experiences undertaken while in the physical body. And once the physical body is no more, then life is no more. And now what once lived is said to have died. And under this precept, under this calculation, you have decided for yourself that life is the body, that you are the body. And that's just not true. You are your soul, not your body. Your body is in constant decay from the time of its birth. Your soul has always existed and never dies. The soul, by contrast, is eternal and undying. Therefore, what we call life is a temporary dance of atoms, held together for a short time by energy before they fall apart. We are living in a state of death when we identify solely with the body as it is destined to return to dust. The metaphysical definition of death, true death, from a metaphysical perspective, is not the cessation of the body, but the ignorance of the soul's eternity. Death is not the ceasing to exist of your body. True death is the ignorance of the soul's eternity. You living under the fear that the day that your body enters a coffin or is catastrophically destroyed the way you tend to imagine from time to time, that is the end of your life. No. You've been dead every single day that you did not know that the soul, you, I am on the inside, who you were genuinely created to be, who you've always been before this body, who you will be after this body, is eternal, never dies, unceasing. That's death. When we are disconnected from our eternal essence, trapped in the illusions of the material world, we are living in a state of spiritual death. When we are disconnected from our eternal essence, stressed over our responsibilities, stressed over our children, ripped and ran for others who were our employers because we felt like we needed that paycheck that came every other week. That's been us, living in spiritual death. Disconnected from our eternal essence, trapped in the illusions of the material world. But you wouldn't say you've been trapped, because you've been so caught up in your feelings and your thoughts about being trapped in the material world, identifying and defining what the material world meant for you, and critiquing yourself and critiquing everybody else inside of it, comparing yourself to others, so much that you don't even realize that you've been trapped in the illusions of the material world, turning circles. You've seen all of this before. You've been here before. None of this is new, but you're still having the same emotional reactions to it. What's going on? Other than the first time you experienced it, you were absent and you were caught up in your thoughts and in your feelings, and you missed the principle, you missed the point. And now here you are again, back inside of the same class, being retained, showing your retardation still exists. You are still not maturing at the level that you should be at this point in your development. Living by our emotions creates socially retarded creatures of habit and familiarity. That's tough, but we need to know that so we can stop presenting ourselves as such. Real life is the awakening to the soul's eternal nature. It is a state of awareness that transcends time, space, and the decay of the physical body. The real life is the awakening to the soul's eternal nature. The moment that you know that your soul never dies and you are your soul and your soul alone, and your soul has been equipped with a physical container for you to carry out an assignment, a purpose, that purpose being to make this kingdom reflect the kingdom of which you come from, then that is real life. That is the beginning of your real life. It's a state of awareness that transcends time, space, and the decay of the physical body. This moment of awakening can take place at any point in the decaying of the physical body, at any space within the geographical location that you find yourself, and any time within your physical experience. Because this awareness, this state of awareness, this state of awakening transcends time, space, and the decay of the physical body. The more we cling to the illusions of physical life, the more we are disconnected from this higher truth. The more you stare at what is not, the more you will miss what is. And we're going to leave that like that. And in that state of disconnection, we experience death in its truest sense. Real life is taking place above you. You're missing out on it, experiencing the torment of hell and death. Not because you've done something so wrong and you're being punished and you have no way to return back to the Father and back to the joyous state that you were created for. Because you refuse to take your eye off of where you are and remember where you come from so that you can return. Not by hard work, effort, not by constant, repeated apologies, not by any of that. Nothing but the returning of your attention back to the land of promise of which you come from. That's it. Go home. Metaphysically return home. Take your attention back to truth. You've been lost in the field of lies, the field of illusions, playing games, trying to keep yourself preoccupied, trying to stay entertained. And I'm just telling you, return home, please. Go back to your Father's house. Go back to where things make sense. Go back to where the answer and the only answers that you would ever hear is yes and more. Go back to the place where fear doesn't exist. Go back to the place where abandonment is not possible. Go back to the place where you are not being graded and critiqued based on your performance, because this is the place of true, unconditional love. Please set your attention back on what you were designed for so that you can operate as you were designed to. Let's take a look at the fragmented self that we present ourselves to be. The self that we think we are, the self that we are most familiar with, is an absolute construct. This identity is shaped by our upbringing, our education, our social roles, and even the expectations of others. Please don't act like, as you said, that you don't care what nobody think about you. You was not around here thinking about what people was going to think about, even what you put on your body that morning when you was in the mirror, before you brushed your teeth good, because you often went to sleep thinking about what you was going to wear to school. So before you brushed your teeth, you was thinking about what people was going to be thinking about you. And you was in your head, eating up your hard drive space, eating up your RAM capacity, worried about what people was going to be thinking when you had no way of anticipating such things. So you were around here self-criticizing yourself, saying harsh things to yourself before other people could say it, hoping that it would soften the blow, but it never did. Because when other people said what you called to yourself by putting your attention on such silly things in your free time, you just pretended like you never said it to yourself and like it was the first time hearing it, and often had an emotional reaction that covered the fact that you had been there before, internally, before you ever experienced it in the external. You being so fake. The self that we are most familiar with is a construct. This identity is shaped by our upbringing, our education, our social roles, and even the expectation of others. We identify ourselves with our job titles, our family roles, physical appearance, achievements, and failures. I'm a teacher. I'm a principal. I'm a police officer. I'm a firefighter. No, you're a son. You're a daughter. You're a creation of the creator of all things. You have been sustained for the sole purpose of causing this kingdom to reflect the kingdom of which that you came. Whatever function you put inside of your experience to hopefully be an expression of the gifts that you have been given internally and supernaturally, and not out of an act of desperation to avoid lack, poverty, and things that are absolute constructs of your imagination, such as the self that you have also constructed. However, this version of the self is limited by ego and exists primarily to satisfy external expectations. It's more a reflection of the external world than a true expression of our inner nature. Think about that. You operate more in accordance with your environment than you do your creation. You've been wired for abundance, but you were exposed to poverty. And it's crazy because you act like what you were exposed to overrides what you were created for so much, when what you were exposed to has absolutely no power until you give your attention, your power, to it. But what you were created to be has all power, because what you were created to be, you were created to be by one who has all power. So therefore it took all power to create you as such. So it will take all power to sustain you as such. This self is in constant conflict with itself because it tries to meet impossible standards. Pause. Why do you find yourself in constant conflict with yourself? I don't care what your theory is. I don't care to know what you think. I don't care to know what you feel. What I'm telling you is we all find ourselves in constant conflict by trying to reach and obtain unrealistic, unobtainable, absolutely facetious, impossible standards that no one other than ourselves have set for ourselves. And this leads to our suffering, this leads to our confusion, and this leads to our overall state of discontentment. This is why we're constantly dissatisfied, because we're constantly trying to reach impossible standards that we've set for ourselves inside of this imaginary, illusionary expression of who we think we are. We operate every day partnered with a self-sabotager. You are partnered with one who loves to be in conflict with him or herself, so that another plan to fix him or herself can be seen, mapped out, initiated even, but never concluded, because we're constantly distracted. And inside of one self-fixed mission, there's a million other ones waiting on you. The self we operate as, beneath the surface, identity is the functional self. The self that we act as on a daily basis. This is the self driven by unconscious habits, conditioned beliefs, and survival instincts. Often we operate on autopilot, repeating the same thoughts. Often we operate on autopilot, repeating the same thoughts and behaviors without truly understanding why we do what we do. You do it because it's what you know. You do it because it's what you've done. You do it because it's what you've seen. You do it because it's the culture. You do it because it's the upbringing. It's what you were taught. You do it because those who you've imitated, those who you've idolized, those who you've highly esteemed, you do it because they did it. You do it because they expect you to. You do it because the masses are doing it and you don't want to be left out. The functional self is reactive, bound by the illusions of the material world and limited by fear and desire. It is an incomplete version of who we truly are and often conflicts with the ideal version of the self we think we are. Who you've been in function oftentimes conflicts with who you are in theory. And that's why when you talk in theory, people tend to get irritated, because your theories do not match your habits. They don't match your experiences. You don't factor in the reflection of your inconsistency when you're building the new theory of who you will be in the future, now that you have this newfound law that you have written for yourself. That's nothing but your newest impossible standard to try to meet. That's going to lead to your latest confusion. The self that we were created to be, the true self, the self that we were created to be, is much deeper. It is the essence of our soul, which exists beyond physical limitations. There is no physical limitation to you and I, because you and I are not our bodies. Our bodies have physical limitations. They have geographical locations, and those geographical locations are one at a time. But you and I are limitless. You and I are infinite. You think your body fat. You big. It don't make no sense to think as small as you do when you big as you are. It makes no sense to put yourself in these small, microscopic roles that you try to minimize yourself into, big as you is. You look silly. This self is connected to universal consciousness, divine purpose, and the eternal nature of existence. It is untouched by the material world's illusions of time, decay, and limitation. To align with this true self, we must shed the layers of false identity and illusions of separation from the universe. Our ultimate purpose is to remember and embody this divine self, reclaiming our eternal nature. Reclaiming our eternal nature. It never left you. You never lost it. You walked off. You thought you found something better. You thought you could create something better. But now that you found that everything is null and void, it may lead you to material riches, but would never carry you to happiness, peace, and joy on the inside. Maybe it's time that you reclaim what's rightfully yours, what you abandoned to try to create something better than the Creator provided for you. Shifting from the illusions to truth. How do we do it? Breaking from the illusion. To awaken from the illusion of life is death, we must begin by questioning our beliefs about reality. This means examining what we think life is, who we think we are, and how we relate to the world around us. All three of those are questions that we assume that we could answer clearly and consciously and honestly and transparently and fluently if asked. But to be honest, nobody really asks us that. And if somebody does ask us who we think we are, we'll say, well, I don't think I'm nobody. I know and we'll call our government name. But it's our same government name that if somebody seen us 50 to 100 yards away and screamed at the top of their lungs across a crowded building, we would not only be embarrassed, we would also be upset with them, because why you calling him a name like that, bro? So is my name who I am? Is who my face, my body, my past experiences, my culture, my upbringing, my skin tone, my gender, my what? Like, do you know? Do you know that it's something that you can't even see? Do you know that it's something that is beyond sight, but is realer than anything you'll ever see? What we think life is. Is life still to you what takes place in between the birth of you as a baby and the death or the transition of you as your demise? Is that still what life is to you? Or is life to know I am, which is you, as you were created to be? and aware of your inner makeup. You are not going to break away from the illusion unless you are willing to let go of attachment to the physical body, the attachment to material possessions, and the attachment to societal labels. As long as you need them to recognize you as something based upon what you've accomplished or what you think you know or what they think you know, as long as you need your physical container to be presented in such a way, accepted in such a way, as long as the material possessions that you are obsessed with lead you into the desperation that causes you to compromise and partner with lower expressions of life or illusions, because lower expressions of life are illusions, which is not life at all. Y'all know ain't no script to this, so we just kind of make adjustments as we go. And I appreciate y'all for rocking with that and understanding this form of communication. Even what I'm reading from now is just a collection of notes that, you know, I would love to put together into an ebook for y'all and be able to share. Breaking the illusion requires letting go of attachment to the physical body, attachment to material possessions, and attachment to societal labels. We must detach from the ego's desire to control and to define us, and instead open ourselves to the infinite potential of our soul. Anytime anybody has ever said anything about who you are or what you do, you have stricken back or were tempted to immediately fire back with a statement of defense that you thought was fully justified and you thought was also fully accurate and 100% honest. And half the time it was trash. I mean, when we take the statement and we break it down word for word, line for line, it just does not lead to a factual, realistic presentation of a truth, period. We be flagging, we be lying. We be defending ourselves from what we be deflecting. Connecting with the eternal is something that we must do to break away from the illusion. Meditation, inner reflection, and deep spiritual practice are tools for transcending the illusion of death. Through these practices, we can silence the chatter of the mind. You gotta shut up. You gotta stop talking to yourself. You gotta stop talking to yourself about what you're talking to yourself about. You gotta stop. It leads nowhere except in another circle. And at this point, you should be dizzy. Through these practices, we can silence the chatter of the mind and reconnect with the stillness of the soul. The soul has been unmoved by the tossing to and fro of your physical container as you have partnered with every passing illusion that you thought was detrimental in your life depended on. It's in this space of stillness that we begin to experience true life. Realizing our true nature involves letting go of fear. Our true nature involves letting go of fear. You can't be your true self and be afraid. You cannot be an extension of love. You cannot extend yourself freely to all that you come in contact with if you're afraid. You cannot be protecting yourself and be loving others. You cannot be loving yourself and be protecting yourself from others. Because if you were loving yourself, you would be extending yourself freely to all that you come in contact with out of the free gift that you have extended to yourself first. You operate with barriers and put walls up with other people because you have barriers, walls, and scales of blindness with yourself. How you operate amongst others is how you operate with yourself. You will never extend pleasantries to others that you do not first extend to yourself. You will never forgive them until you have learned to forgive yourself. You will never love them until you first love you. You cannot accept them. You cannot approve of them. You cannot overlook their shortcomings if you never overlook your own. Realizing our true nature involves letting go of fear. Fear of what? Fear of death, fear of failure, fear of inadequacy. We are already whole. We are already eternal. It is our disconnection from this truth that creates our suffering. If you knew that you were eternal, would you fear death? If you knew that you were whole, would you fear being inadequate? Would you fear failure? Aligning with our true purpose is something that we must do to break away from the illusion. Once we shed the layers of false identity, we can begin to live with purpose. Our true purpose is not defined by what we do in the material world, but by how we embody the eternal consciousness within us. How you align yourself with the presence of God within you and the whisper of the Almighty is the proclamation of what God within man is capable of. You are not given a testament of your power. You are not given an account for your abilities. You are a witness, and you are not. If you're a witness, that means you're not on trial. God is on trial. Your creator is on trial. Source is on trial. And you are here to bear witness of either God's failure or God's success.